We are thrilled to welcome visitors back and show you what's been happening here. While we're striving to be the host, offering the most, sustainability touches every nook and cranny. The great outdoors has gotten even greater, and there are many more stories at the Springs Preserve where all that matters is what's elemental. Springs Preserve, we consider each and every guest that walks on property part of our family. We're beyond excited to open our doors wide and welcome you back. And as our manager Bruno Bols is here to say, we are doing everything we can to maximize your safety while providing a sense of normalcy in nature.
Yeah, we couldn't be happier right now. What we do best is serve our community. So we've all been feeling a little off ever since Springs Preserve closed because we want to be here and we want to be of value to our community.
We knew that we could only do that if we would be able to provide a truly safe environment for our guests and our staff.
Even before the Springs Preserve closed, we were able to utilize the organization's pandemic plan, which they've had in place for years. So using that as our guiding document, we already had some things set up in place that we knew we were going to be doing. Number one, for staff safety, and then number two, for the eventual reopening of the Springs Preserve.
Once we determined how to keep our staff that were on site safe, we needed to come up with a more comprehensive plan on cleaning and sanitizing so that we would be ready to welcome visitors back.
And that meant a couple of things. One, reduce the amount of people we had on site initially. Keep them safe, keep them socially distanced. You'll hear social distancing a lot from us because that's been our mantra. And then two, look at a plan for this very large property on how we can clean and sanitize that several times throughout the day as we bring visitors back. We're doing sanitizing, fogging throughout the day, we're doing touch point cleaning throughout the day, and we're doing additional cleaning of restrooms throughout the day.
And just as all other businesses in town, donning a face mask is required to enter the Springs Preserve.
And you'll see signage as soon as you pull into our main area where you go through the gates as masks are required for entry. And anytime you cannot maintain social distancing of at least 6 feet or more from people that are not in your same household, we're requiring folks to wear masks here as well. As you will see, all of our staff that you interact with will be wearing masks the whole time you're here.
As you look around on your next visit, you'll see plenty of signage to keep us all within these new parameters for the health and safety of our guests and our staff.
You'll see signs on the ground just like you do everywhere. All of our paved pathways have signs reminding people to keep at least 6 feet apart. When you walk into the ticket area, we have queuing areas for you. You will see signs in multiple locations letting you know which buildings are open and which ones are closed, and that we need you all to help us with that social distancing.
We know it can be tricky planning anything right now, and we want to make sure a visit to the Springs Preserve is an easy and welcome escape. That's why we outline all of our current safety measures you can expect from us and what we ask of you right on our website, which is your only way to reserve a time ticket before you arrive on property.
So if you want to come visit the Springs Preserve, you can visit us at springspreserve.org and reserve a timed ticket. So it's really important for us right now, in order to guarantee that social distancing of 6 feet or more, to limit the number of people we have on property per hour. So please take some time to look on our website. When you reserve your ticket, it actually will give you those directions that we need you to follow and the rules that you're actually agreeing to when you click to reserve your ticket.
If you're anything like us, you've been longing for an outdoor adventure in the fresh fall air. Well, we've got you covered. We have 110 acres of natural area, a lush cienega, and extensive trail system just waiting to be explored. Don't know where to start? Nathan Harper, our resident archaeologist and history buff, shares a few key spots we've freshened up with your next visit in mind.
Hi, I'm Nathan Harper. I'm the preserve archaeologist here at the Springs Preserve. We're excited to welcome you back safely to the Springs Preserve, and we're going to take a quick walk today and show you a few exciting features and places here at the Springs Preserve where you can learn a little bit about the history of Las Vegas and the Valley. Behind me here, we have our spring mound, which is part of the Big Springs or the Las Vegas Springs complex. Rather than forming a pool and flowing out into the Las Vegas creeks, what would happen here is the ground would get soaked, dust would blow in and gather over time, raising to the height of that artesian pressure. There's about 40 or 50 of these spring mounds throughout the Las Vegas Valley, and anytime they've done excavations or dug into these mounds, they found things like mammoth, bison, camel, and other prehistoric animals like that. We're working right now to do some excavation work and some research on the spring mound here. We've surveyed the top of the spring mound. We found some of the oldest artifacts at the Springs Preserve from the top of our spring mound here. And we're working to do some remote sensing and some scans below the surface so we can get an idea where we want to do excavations in the future. So when you're talking about the Springs Preserve being the birthplace of Las Vegas, this spring mound is one of those prehistoric places that you can come visit here on the trails. I'm excited to show you some other things here at the Springs Preserve on the trails today, and we're going to check out some other things right now. Come on. Just a short walk from our spring mound here on our trails, we have another historic area that we call the Dugout. This is an archaeological area that's been investigated since the 1970s. When we returned to this area in 2008, we did some more excavations and research and identified mud brick and cottonwood beams that consisted of a habitation structure that was dug into the banks of the creek with a roof over the top and mud bricks as the front wall. We found lots of interesting artifacts here, including brown glass, crockery, and lots of shell casings from cowboy six-shooters and shotguns. One of those shell casings was able to tell us that this area was occupied probably for about 10 years between 1870 and 1880. When we use our skills as historians to investigate the historical record, we can go back and look at the land records and identify that this was owned by a man named John Howell. John Howell was of mixed race from North Carolina and was one of the first landowners in this area. He operated this area as a ranch for several years before moving on out to Spring Mountain Ranch State Park. The Dugout is just one of the few historical sites we have here at the Springs Preserve. Let's go see some others. Not far from the Dugout is one of our newer trail segments. This trail segment goes through Reservoir Number 1, which is the first reservoir built by the Water District in 1929. And walking through it, it gives you an idea of how large this 3 million gallon reservoir is. It used to be covered by a superstructure of a redwood dome, and behind it, we see the Clark Street Pump Station, and this was the main pump station that sent water from the Springs Preserve to downtown Las Vegas, providing water to the town of Las Vegas in its earliest days. If you follow this trail through Reservoir Number 1, you'll come to Cottonwood Grove, one of our nicest areas here at the Springs Preserve. It really gives you an idea of what early life would have been like here in Las Vegas. Many townspeople would come out to the springs to escape the heat and dust of the city and the town. They would camp out and put tents along the sides of the creek underneath the cottonwoods. You can experience some of that too when you come to visit us at Cottonwood Grove, our picnic area. You can gaze out onto the ponds and see the frogs and the fish that we've stocked them with. We're excited to safely welcome you back to our trails here at the Springs Preserve.
Hi, I'm Renee Grayson, Guest Services Supervisor here at the Springs Preserve. We're excited to welcome our members and our guests back. We have some big changes. One of those changes is that you're going to need a reservation before you visit. So make sure you go to springspreserve.org to select your date and your time that you want to visit. When you arrive, we're going to check your tickets and make sure that they are correct and that you have your reservation all in order. Face coverings are required, but once you leave the ticketing area, you may remove your mask as long as you stay in the outside areas and maintain 6 feet of social distancing. So our guest and our staff safety is our #1 concern when you visit the Springs Preserve. So you want to make sure that you follow the instructional dots that we have on the ground as well as the safety signage that we have in place. We want to make sure that everyone is maintaining safe social distancing throughout their visit today. Just make sure you check springspreserve.org for any updates of operational hours. Also, arrive 10 to 15 minutes early before your reservation begins and bring lots of sunscreen and water on your visit. We're excited to see you back.
They say distance makes the heart grow fonder. That couldn't be more true to how we feel about our members and guests. We've missed you. Although it sure was quiet from the missing sounds of laughter and joy in the air, we heard many more chirps, squeaks, and tweets from our wild-feathered and furry friends as we continue doing our part to maintain the grounds and care for the animals that have come to call the Springs Preserve home. Our members and guests are the heartbeat of this property, and we sure have missed you breathing life into our everyday operations here at the Springs Preserve.
I miss interacting with guests, the enthusiasm that guests have when they come here and their love for this place. We can't wait to see people coming back.
I really miss the families coming. I miss seeing the kids, the kids programs and the kids activities. A lot of our families have grown up here from the time their children were babies all the way through, to be teens and even into adulthood. So over the 13 years, we've seen a lot. So it's been really sad that, we haven't been a part of their lives for a few months, but we're hoping to get back to that very soon.
And I really miss my customers, interacting with customers. I really miss those happy faces coming to the store, exciting bodies, just ready to have the experience of the Springs Preserve.
An experience that our staff values providing to our community.
Everyone really cares a lot about what they do here and the Springs Preserve's cultural impact on Las Vegas and our commitment to environmental education.
Our commitment to provide a safe and secure space spans to each and everyone that sets foot here, even the wildest ones that find themselves on property, even more so now.
We get to see all the new little animals that have been able to take over the Springs Preserve, so it's really wonderful to be here now to see all the little quails running around and all the little ground squirrels.
And these little critters weren't the only ones scurrying around on property during our temporary close. Essential staff were on property throughout the duration, including our zoology staff, in order to provide care for our animals.
Here at Springs Preserve, we have a dedicated team that provides professional animal care to our animals on a daily basis. And that includes feeding, watering, enclosure maintenance, and scheduled veterinary exams. And that commitment to our animal collection continued throughout the facility closure. We also continued monitoring efforts of sensitive wildlife species and corresponding habitat here on site out in our conservation areas.
Not only did Mojave Max emerge from his long-awaited brumation to a much quieter surrounding, we also saw increased activity in both our populations of relict leopard frogs and Pahrump poolfish during this time. In addition to the zoological activity, dedicated staff were here the entire time to maintain the grounds.
And we've got 50-some acres of buildings on property as well. And whether you're in a desert environment or not, those buildings need to be maintained. There's periodic maintenance that has to be done and kept up with, as well as some cleaning because now you've got staff on site. So ever since we closed down, we've had a few people on property making sure that we were safe and secure for ourselves and our staff.
Staff that are thrilled to have guests coming back so we can be here for our community in the best way we know how. The Springs Preserve is a true leader in sustainable architecture and design, so much so that we received a Platinum LEED certification back in 2008, a seal of approval by the architecture and construction industry for sustainable buildings. And while you may look around and miss some of these often discrete design characteristics, if you stop to take a closer look, you might just see the path to a more sustainable home for yourself. The Springs Preserve's Desert Living Center is a true testament to innovative and sustainable design. It showcases a variety of building techniques, both interior and exterior, to live in better harmony with our desert environment. Our buildings use something called rammed earth, which is really an early version of Adobe that helps us reduce our energy loads by requiring much less use of energy to heat and cool the buildings.
So traditional adobe is naturally occurring sediments, a little bit of vegetation, mashed together with some water, and then you make basically mud bricks. Typical adobe home, traditional adobe home, the walls are so thick that they tend to keep the heat out or in if it's wintertime. Rammed earth does much the same.
That means if you touch the exterior of the building in the summer, it will be quite warm. But if you put your hand on the inside of that same wall, it would be cool to the touch. The heat of the sun cannot penetrate the material. Similarly, during colder seasons, the heat inside remains in the building rather than leaching through the walls. The addition of overhangs both inside and out help climate control in the building and also limit the need for additional artificial lighting.
These overhangs are built in such a way that they take advantage of the angle or declination of the sun. So depending on the time of the year, during the wintertime, the sun tends to be a little bit lower on the horizon. And so that's why we have these pretty tall windows. We want to have as much light coming in. During the summertime, however, it sits higher on the horizon, and that's when it's super hot, and maybe we don't want to have as much sunlight coming in. So we have overhangs outside of the building, which go out maybe about 2 to 3 feet, and they prevent, as the sun angles high, too much light from coming into the building to overheat it.
Another exterior design consideration involves water collection. As desert dwellers with limited water resources, it's always advantageous to find ways to capture water during rain events and repurpose for things like landscaping. One design element our architect added to help us with this is what we call a butterfly roof.
Because the building is, of course, shaped like the wings of a butterfly. During a rain event in southern Nevada, which of course we don't have very often, water accumulates kind of in the bottom of the V, then works its way down the stair stepper behind me into the round structure below. That's a cistern. That filters out things that we don't want, and then drops down into a dry wash eventually. So that way we're taking advantage of all the water that happens here on site. We're just moving it around to our landscaping in the gardens here.
Now let's talk about some indoor features, starting with insulation. At the Springs Preserve, we actually use straw bale insulation that's a byproduct from the rice straw industry and would otherwise been burned or disposed in a landfill. Now we know what you're thinking. Isn't that a fire hazard?
All fires require oxygen to kind of fuel that fire. Because this is so densely packed, even though the outer edge of it might burn, there's no ability for the oxygen to kind of fuel that fire and to make it larger. Maybe the edge might burn, that's about it. So it turned out to be a really good thing for us.
Speaking of things heating up, the final sustainable building and design feature we want to point out is right beneath your feet: radiant floor heating. This involves water pipes running under the floorboards with a solar hot water heater up on top of the building. It warms the water, and then the pipes move the now warm water to help heat up the building.
So it makes sense to have your heat source or your cool source as much as possible coming from the floor, because we as humans are hanging out, standing on the floor. And so that way, again, we're reducing the energy loads in this particular building by not having to cool or heat the area where people are not.
Sustainable design is on display all around us at the Springs Preserve. We showcase the reuse of materials to create everyday needs, and we highlight construction details that can make life in our desert climate much more bearable without adding stress to the environment.
Now that we're reopened, one of the things that you can see is our living collection of local animals. So behind me we have some relict leopard frogs. We also have desert hairy scorpions, pocket gophers, desert tarantulas, and here we are in front of the Gila monster exhibit, which is one of 2 venomous lizards in North America, and they are local, endemic to the Mojave. So it's just one of the many things that you're going to see here at the preserve, and we are so happy to welcome you back safely.
Gardening in the desert may be challenging for some, but boy, is it worth the effort. Our desert landscape is beautiful, and with a little know-how, you too can grow like a pro. As our botanical garden supervisor Fritz Coleman explains, it's all about working with our environment and not against it.
Hi, I'm Fritz Coleman. I'm the gardens curator here at the Springs Preserve, and we're doing a new segment called Ask the Desert Gardener. In this segment we respond to online questions that you might have about your garden, and it's our hope to help you grow the most beautiful garden possible. So today we're going to talk about planning your winter garden. We're in some really hot months right now here in Las Vegas, and people spend a lot of time indoors, and there's no better time than now to start planning your winter garden. This climate is fantastic for growing cool season crops in the winter, and there's really a lot you can do with it. You can grow stuff like lettuce, basically any kind of green, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, peas, spinach, any of those types of plants, and you can start that planting in about mid to late October. I like to spend the warmer months at least browsing through gardening catalogs and just seeing what's out there and coming up with a definitive plan so that I can ensure a continuous harvest throughout the winter. I recommend planting from seed. Plants from seed tend to do the best. And if you sow your winter crops at a 2 to 3 week interval, so for example like lettuce or peas or something, if you'd like to make sure you have salad greens throughout the winter, just do repeat plantings every 2 to 3 weeks, and that way once one plant gets old and it's time to rip it out, you'll have another one just filling that space right in. Don't miss this opportunity to order your seeds early, because with this pandemic, gardening is more popular than it's ever been, and so seeds sell out really quickly. So if you want to grow something, I'd say just get online and look. There's hundreds of different lettuce varieties on the market. There's stuff that you never see in restaurants, there's stuff that you never see at the grocery store, There's a lot of room for creativity and some new gardening experiences for everyone. If you have more gardening questions, you can check out our website and just look for Ask the Desert Gardener. It's a great way to get your questions to us here.
The Nevada State Museum is now open. Changes to the galleries, such as one-way navigation and a time ticketing system limiting the number of guests inside, are there for your safety. Inspired by those learning new skills during their time at home, the museum is featuring a new exhibit, Back to Basics, the Art of Crafting, with artifacts that showcase dressmaking, quilting, and more. The museum is located on the Springs Preserve campus. Ticket information is located at springspreserve.org. They're light, they're fluffy, and they're sure to send your taste buds straight to Cloud 9. Chef Cicely shows us how to prepare the trendy and tasty cloud egg for your next photo-worthy brunch. Watch as she whips up this positively delightful dish.
I love working in kitchens, and one of the reasons I love working in kitchens is because I find new ways to reinvent ingredients and new ways to use foods all the time. Today I'm going to share one of those that two wonderful guest chefs taught me. I'm going to be making cloud eggs. So pretty simple to start. I've got to separate some eggs, whites and the yolks. Then all of my egg whites are going to go into this mixer right here with just a touch of salt. And I'm going to turn it on to about a medium high. And I'm going to let this beat until they form stiff peaks. So this is starting with the technique of making a meringue, but it's going to go in a totally different direction. Once I get a little bit of bubbles going in there and some soft peaks forming, I'm going to add just a tiny bit of baking powder. Baking powder is a leavening agent, and it's already got a little bit of acid in it. So what's going to happen when I put that in and moisture activates the acid is it's going to release carbon dioxide, and it's going to help my eggs poof up a little bit more and stay poofy. And I've got some foamy egg whites going. Then I want to add just that little pinch of baking powder. I'm going to do 2 pinches. All right, we're going back up to medium high. I'm going to let this keep on beating now until stiff peaks form. All right, that's been about 3 minutes, and these eggs look perfect. Let's see, when we lower that down, nice stiff peaks. Now I'm dropping this lovely mixture onto my pan. I'm going to get another spoon to help me form these. Form my little clouds, and then into my little clouds, I'm going to make just a little indentation into the center. That's going to come in handy later when I add back my egg yolks. All right, so these fluffy little clouds are gonna go into the oven about 300 degrees for 2 to 3 minutes. I'm just looking for this texture, this shape, to stiffen up. While those egg whites are cooking, I am going to slice off a piece of this most wonderful artisan bread. Oh, the crust on this is just fantastic. So this one is our specialty just white sourdough. So I'm going to just spread, sweetened with a touch of honey, just a tiny bit of butter on it. And we're going to do 2 varieties here. So a little bit of sugar, a little bit of nutmeg, a little bit of cinnamon. And these are just going to get a nice light toast. And I've got another bread. This one, these just keep getting more beautiful than the last. Whole wheat sourdough. And we are going to lay on it some nice pieces of smoked cheddar. Now the smoked cheddar is not going to melt so well because it's smoked, so a lot of the moistures come out in the smoking process, but it's going to get nice and warm and soften up just perfectly for what we're going to do next. We're getting just a little bit of browning on top of those. That's perfect. It's like the golden sunshine, the sunset hitting those eggs. So we're going to add back in our sunshine. And then this goes back into the oven for another 2 to 3 minutes. And now for the fun part. Scooping up these delicate little sunshine eggs, cloud eggs. On top of this wonderful artisan toast. Wonderful as a delightful treat for breakfast, an afternoon tea snack, but no matter how you swing it, it's a little taste of sunshine. And that's just how we like it. My name's Chef Cicely, and thanks for joining me here at the Divine Cafe at the Springs Preserve.
There's a lot more to discover, so join us next time here at the Springs Preserve, where our excited staff, acres of natural outdoor surroundings, historic museum experiences, and rising beacons of sustainable architecture mingle to bring new life to Las Vegas.